Today on the Gilbert.K Show, we're sitting down with the legendary Grammy-winning producer behind iconic projects like Evita, Gypsy, Tombeaux, and some of the most acclaimed musical recordings ever made. From Broadway cast albums to award-winning film and classical projects, his work has influenced generations of music lovers worldwide. Let's give a big welcome to the one and only David Caddick.
Hey, David. Pleasure to have you on the show. How are you today?
Hi, I'm really well, thank you. And thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, no problem. And congratulations on the Grammy nomination.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're going to start our first segment, Roots and First Sparks. Let's rewind to where all it began. What did music sound like in your childhood home? And when did you first feel that spark that music wasn't just entertainment, it was your calling?
I grew up in the northeast of England in South Yorkshire, although my accent doesn't show that any longer. That's a longer story. But at home, music, the source of music was either the radio or the television. Neither of my parents were in any way musical. We didn't have a piano at home. And yet, for some inexplicable reason, I was drawn to the instrument. One of my aunts, one of my father's sisters, had a piano in their house, and we would go and visit, and I would just go and make sounds on it. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. At the age of 8, our junior school, we were taught to read music, to play the recorder. And once I could read the treble clef, I'm very good at putting puzzles together. So I bought myself, my parents got me a piano tutor. I worked out the bass clef, and I taught myself where the keys were and how to play. And I'm fortunate I had perfect pitch. I didn't know that, but I could make recognizable sounds on the piano. And of course, that encouraged me. I didn't take any real formal lessons until much later. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I grew up around a hospital. My mother was a nurse. She was in charge of a surgical unit. And I was fascinated by everything medical. But by the time I was 17 years old and the science was getting much harder, and music definitely seemed to be the most natural for me, I shifted my focus, studied hard with a wonderful piano teacher, and managed to get into a music college in London, which was the London College of Music. So it was a late change for me in choosing music as a career.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So before Broadway pits and film studios, what was the early moment you realized I can actually build a real career in music? And who was the first person who believed in your potential?
Well, I went to study classical music, studied piano, conducting, and also organ as a second instrument, since I grew up playing the organ at church at home. The director of music there was an amazing man called Dr. William S. Lloyd Webber. That surname may be familiar because he was the father of Andrew and his brother Julian. For some reason, Dr. Webber saw the potential that I had. Independently, because I could play piano and other keyboards in many different styles, and I had very good sight reading ability. After leaving college, I managed to get work as a substitute musician in a theater pit, as they called them. And so I started earning a living in something that I hadn't really studied. And for me, there was a connection to music being used to tell a story that was different from the traditional classical music I suppose you could say that opera does that. But in opera, it's about the quality and beauty of the voice, and never, at least it was then, so much about the story. And it was not an intended track of mine, but the theater gave me a pathway. And I subsequently met Andrew Lloyd Webber from an introduction by his parents. And I then worked closely with him for some time and his company. And I built a career for myself. But it was not planned. It wasn't initially what I studied. On the other hand, I don't think I could do what I do without those formative years of principled study of classical music.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So where your parents, did they enroll you when you were early childhood, you were enrolled in any classes,
No,
artistic classes? No.
They offered, but for me, it was something I enjoyed doing for myself. So as I said earlier, it wasn't something that I was looking to formulate as a career whereby you practice many hours a day. It was a hobby. Music was a hobby for me. And that's why I loved it. I studied hard at science, but it wasn't until my last year in high school where I really had to study hard and change the way I played, because I developed habits that were not good. But my parents were always supportive in that change. And the wonderful thing is, as I achieved different levels of success, they were able to see that. And indeed, they saw things that I did in London, and then they made 3 trips to New York to see shows that I was opening there, which was wonderful for really people from a working class background, never having imagined that that's what their son would do.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So you went from early gigs to massive theatrical and film opportunities. What was the turning point where you felt your career shifted from working musician to creative force with a clear path?
That's an interesting question. There wasn't one point. And I don't, unless there's a major event, it's a very gradual path. One job always led to the next. There was the breakthrough, I think, for me was on meeting Andrew Lloyd Webber at a time where he was looking to establish himself. He was already established as a composer, but he wanted to produce his own work, which meant that he owned the rights rather than giving that to a theatrical producer. Even though he worked very closely with Sir Cameron Mackintosh, Andrew fought hard to be able to control his own rights. And I went as his executive music director for his company for a period of time, which included the success of The Phantom of the Opera, which I originated. And when that moved to New York, I had the opportunity to move with it. So that was definitely a change in my life. I moved from the UK to America, based myself in New York City. And really, America, therefore, has been my home since the middle of 1987.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you worked on Evita and You Must Love Me with Madonna, what surprised you most about transitioning from live theater energy to the precision and pressure of a major Hollywood musical recording?
By the time we did Evita, I had a certain level of studio experience. Of course, Andrew always records all his work, and I was always present in the studio whenever that happened. And then subsequently, when I became an independent musician, other people asked me to produce recordings of their theatrical shows. So in beginning the work with Madonna, what was important for her was to achieve a level of trust with the people around her, because she didn't know me. She didn't know Alan Parker, the director. She had met Andrew, but Andrew was not going to be the one who taught her the music. And I was able to establish a wonderful rapport with her, because she is, no one of that level of success does it by accident. Yeah. She is very focused and clear what works for her and what doesn't. So we used the same techniques that I always use. What does the artist need in order to be able to do their work, whatever that setting? So we recorded the entire score in the studio, but we also knew that there would be moments where the intimacy of the moment would be better captured if the actor could sing live. And that therefore had me off to the side of the set with a keyboard. The actor had an in-ear monitor so that they could hear that, and they sang live. The sound technician captured that audio, and then that became the master audio, and we overlaid the orchestra on my keyboard track.
That's great. That's great. So you were a Grammy-winning producer for Les Miserables, the complete symphonic recording. When your name was announced, what hit you first? Your childhood self, your years of dedication, or the weight of that landmark recording?
I think it's probably all of those.
All of them.
Yeah. I have to say that being asked to do the complete symphonic recording of Les Mis was a wonderful opportunity and quite a challenge, because we would be recording in different countries. We recorded the orchestra, which was 80 strong, at CTS Studios, Wembley, London. The studio, like many of the large studios, no longer exists. Some of our vocalists were there, but not all. And this recording predates Pro Tools and digital recording. So we now have several boxes of recording tape, 24-track, 2-inch tape, that we had to make copies of in case in our travels anything got damaged. So we took then a suitcase of those, and my engineer, David Hunt, and I flew to Australia, and we recorded some principal vocals in Australia. And then we flew to Los Angeles, recorded more vocals there, and mixed the recording at another studio that no longer exists, the Record Plant. And then took all that back to England to play for the composers and the theatrical producer, Sir Cameron Mackintosh. And so we were finding out how to do it as we went along. There was no roadmap for doing something like that. But as I said earlier, I'm very good at putting puzzles together. And therefore, to have that work recognized by the Recording Academy was a wonderful sense of achievement for everyone who was involved in it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So as a kid, you mentioned that it was the whole thing, the music was a hobby for you, but did you see yourself winning a Grammy or being nominated? I had some guests there. They used to say when I was a kid, I used to see myself. They had this image when they were kids that they're on a stage holding a trophy or something. Did it happen to you? Have you no? Did you have
No, that
a
never
vision
happened to
board
me.
maybe? No, not okay.
No, I think I'm always focused on the job at hand. And
Yeah, yeah.
I'm never thinking beyond that of what could this lead to, because then you're not focused on what you need to
On the
do.
work. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, no, I've always thought I'm very fortunate to have led the life I have lived, but it was never planned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just okay. That's great. So, and now you work on the 2026 Grammy-nominated Best Musical Theater album, Gypsy, puts you back in the spotlight. What did you want this new Gypsy recording to capture that previous versions didn't? And what does this nomination mean to you at this stage of your career?
Given the fact that Gypsy is probably one of the most iconic American musicals, being asked to do it was always going to be a wonderful opportunity. First of all, I wasn't attached to the production. So me and my other producing partner, David Lai, whom I work very closely with, we are both of us musicians and conductors. So we bring the totality of our musical sensibility to bear on all our recordings. The producers had decided to return to the original 27-piece orchestration by Russell Bennett. And so very often musicals over time have reduced the sizes of their orchestras as technology has allowed them to produce a great sound with fewer people.
Mm-hmm.
The producers here felt that they could return to the original orchestration. So now we would be given the opportunity to record that version of the show, and that was going to be a wonderful, exciting challenge. There are now only 2 large studios in New York City capable of doing this. So we knew that was going to be a challenge of being able to secure a physical space that we could take an orchestra of that size, still with the separation that we would need, and to be able to have sufficient isolation booths for the actors. But Power Station, which is now associated with Berkeley, was able to do that for us. So we set about then the discussion with the producers and the director, George C. Wolfe, on what exactly would we record? Because there have been lots of other recordings of it. So there were examples of where cuts could be made. But we also knew that we may be able to make some slightly different choices based on what this director's vision has been for the show. So that was a discussion process, and we arrived at the track list, and then our dates were booked. With a cast recording, you have very limited time. Mm-hmm. It's very expensive, and we are very much a niche section of recorded music, in the sense that when the original was done in the 1950s, there was a vinyl album that was done, and you could have a double vinyl album, but you were always limited to the amount of one side and the other that music could hold. With streaming nowadays, people just want to download the songs that they like. They're not necessarily going to download everything. So you want to make sure that what you do record is going to be of interest to your audience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. Okay, David, we're going to take a break now. We're going to play a game, This or That, and it's a rapid fire game for the audience to get to know you. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Vinyl, childhood, soundtrack, or live concerts?
Where I grew up, live concerts weren't a possibility, so vinyl.
Vinyl. Script first or rough cut first?
Rough cut.
Big orchestra or intimate ensemble?
Both are great, but a big orchestra is unbeatable.
Long schedule or last minute creative sprint?
Both are often present. So I love to plan a schedule, but you have to be able to think on your feet.
Yeah. Broadway cast recording or film musical adaptation?
I would say Broadway cast recording for the most part. Yeah.
Quiet walk to reset or listening to other composers?
Quiet walk to reset.
Perfect take or raw emotional take?
The latter, raw emotional take.
First Grammy moment or first major film cue moment?
First Grammy moment.
Conducting musicians or producing behind the glass?
Conducting.
And finally, reinvent a classic or create something brand new?
Whenever possible, create something new, but reinvention of a classic is always a wonderful challenge.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to our next segment, latest film work. Your recent film work shows a composer who keeps evolving. What drew you to your latest film projects, and how have they pushed you artistically in ways early career David wouldn't have imagined?
I think the advances in technology that allow the quality of recording that now can be achieved and digital editing, so that you are never limited to time. In the old days, it was about tape stock or film stock. But nowadays with digital recording, it's about how much time are you going to be allowed, but it's never a technical limitation. I love the challenge of being told, we're going to record this, how are you going to do it?
Mm-hmm. That's great. Modern film scoring blends orchestras, digital textures, sound design, and vocal layering. In your most recent films, what new musical techniques or storytelling tools excited you the most? And how did you decide when to break the traditional rules?
Well, I haven't had recent experience working in film. However, one of my favorites this last year was the film Emilia Perez, which I thought the score was amazing, and what they achieved with that, both in the intimacy and then being able to open the screen and do amazing production numbers. I thought it was an amazing achievement from everyone involved in that film.
Yeah, that's amazing. Dix the musical is bold, chaotic, and totally unique. What was the biggest creative challenge and the biggest joy of crafting music for a film that embraces humor while still needing real musical precision?
My involvement in that film was quite small. I worked with Nathan Lane in New York, teaching him the music and working out how he was going to sing it. But I was not involved in the final shoot. My great friend Marius de Vries was going to be the music supervisor of that. But it's such an absurd project that we laughed the whole time. And then when I got the chance to see it on screen, of course, it's wonderful, the absurdity of it. And the lyrics are unquotable here.
That's amazing. And we're going to move on to our final segment, process and advice. If a young composer watching this dreams of film scoring or Broadway cast albums, what's your most honest piece of advice for building a career like yours? And what do you hope people feel when listening to your music years from now?
I think for a composer, it's focusing on what is the story that you're telling. Mm-hmm. Focus on why music is necessary to tell that story. Words tell stories. We all use words. I'm using them now to describe. When do words alone become insufficient and need to evolve into music to be able to communicate something further? Once a composer, I think, understands where music takes over and elevates the narrative to advance the story, then they bring all their skill to bear in that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's great. And do you have a dream project? You've done it all. You won the Grammys. Now you've been nominated for a Grammy. You worked with Madonna. Any dream projects you'd like to do in the future?
It's doing more of it. The opportunity to work with similar people who are always looking to advance their creative skills in storytelling, in composing music. I knew very early on I was not a composer. Mm-hmm. Sure, I can sit down at the piano and doodle and make sounds, but no one else wants to hear that. However, I found I have a talent for making music sound good, whether that's as a conductor in drawing a performance together, giving direction to singers, producing sounds in bringing the whole together. That's what I want more of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. David, we're nearing the end of the show. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching. David Caddick, everyone. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It was a pleasure, David.
Thank you.